Hello everybody. In this lecture I will be discussing with you about emitter bias. You have already come across the base bias in the previous lecture, and you have seen that the base bias was primarily used for switching applications, that is the digital applications. But when it comes to the question of amplification, we need base bias fails. It is not sufficient. In that case we need a different type of biasing, which is called emitter biasing. And you know that for emitter biasing, the position or location of the Q point should lie almost at the middle of the load line between the two extremities, and it is important to ensure that the position of the Q point will be immune to the changes of the current gain. So the location of Q point should be preferably at the middle of load line, and thereby we need to ensure that it should be immune to changes in current gain, that is beta. So let us see. So this is the basic idea of amplification with the use of emitter biasing, by fixing the Q point near about the middle of the load line, so that the position or the location of the Q point does not get change easily because of changes in the current gain. So let us now draw the circuit of emitter biasing. Take the NPN BJT. So this is our NPN BJT. VBB is connected directly to the base terminal without the base resistance. No base resistance is present. As we have seen in the base bias circuit, there was a base resistance, but here there is no base resistance. And the collector terminal is connected with collector resistance and with a biasing voltage VCC. This is as usual. Now a new resistance RE is connected between the emitter terminal and ground, in this case for emitter bias circuit. So we can say that the difference between the base bias and emitter bias circuit is, from the base bias circuit the RB resistance has been moved to RE position, that is it is connected between the emitter and the ground, and there is no base resistance, and base biasing voltage is directly applied to the base terminal. So this is the basic difference between the base and emitter biasing circuits, that the resistance, the bias resistance, has been replaced or has been moved from base terminal to the emitter terminal. So this will be the bias resistance for emitter bias circuit, and it is called emitter resistance. Now we can write, considering the input loop, the first equation. So by doing this we can ensure that by moving the bias resistance from base to the emitter, we can ensure that the Q point will lie near the middle of the load line, and it will be immune to the changes of current gain beta. Now the emitter is no longer directly grounded. In this case it is above the ground, and there is a resistance between the emitter terminal and the ground. So we can write at the input circuit, if this is considered to be the VBE, that is voltage between base emitter. So, and if VE, this is VE, is given by the emitter voltage, this V is given by the emitter voltage across this resistance RE. So we can write VE equal to VBB minus VBE in this case. So this is one of the equations from the input circuit. Now let us find the Q point, and for that we should assume some values. Let us assume VBB as 5 volt, VCC as 15 volt, RC as 1 kilo ohm, and RE as 2.2 kilo ohm. Now using this data, let us find the Q point. So if we apply KVL in the output loop, the voltage between VC and VE, this is the voltage at the VC is the voltage at the collector terminal, VE is the voltage at the emitter terminal, and the voltage between VC and VE is denoted by VCE. So in the collector circuit or in the output circuit, we can write VCE is nothing but VCC minus ICRC. Now to go into this, we need to find IC first. How that can be found? You can see this VE is the voltage across the resistance RE. So if we now put the values VBB equal to 5 and VBE equal to 0.7, so it is 4.3 volt, which is the emitter voltage across the RE resistance. Now RE is given as 2.2 kilo ohm. So we can calculate IE, that is the emitter current from there. So emitter current will be how much? It is VE by RE, and that is equal to 4.3 divided by 2.2 kilo ohm, and this will give you the value 1.95 milliampere. Now for a transistor, you know, IC is almost equal to RE because of very small value of IB. So we can say this is equal to 1.95 milliampere as we have found here. Now if IC is 1.95 milliampere, so use this value in this equation. So we can write VCE is equal to 15 minus 1.95 milliampere into RC. So if you calculate this one, this will give you 13.1 volt. So now this is not actual VCE. Why? Because in this case the emitter is not directly grounded. So rather we should be writing this as instead of writing VCE, we should be writing this as VC, not VCE, because I repeat, emitter is not directly grounded. There is a resistance between the emitter terminal and the ground, and that is RE. So this voltage 13.1 volt is actually the collector terminal voltage, that is VC. So we have found VC equal to 13.1 volt and VE equal to, we have already found 4.3 volt. So what is VCE? From here we can find VC minus V, that is 13.1 minus 4.3 volt, which is 8.8 volt. So from all these calculations, what finally we have arrived? We have arrived at VCE equal to 8.8 volt and IC is approximately equal to 1.95 milliampere. So we have got a set of values for VC and IC. And you know what is Q point? The representation of Q point is, it is a set of values of. So we have found Q point. As we know, Q point is nothing but a coordinate of VC comma IC. This coordinate, this is a particular Q point. So we have found from here a value for VC and value for IC. So this will represent a particular Q point based on this given circuit. So now what we can do is, once the Q point is obtained, the collector emitter voltage and the collector current, we can draw the load line based on this circuit. Before going into that, let us discuss one important thing about this emitter bias circuit. I have mentioned one thing at the beginning, that the circuit should be immune to changes in current gain. That means if the Q point is changed because of the change in current gain, that will mean the amplification by the transistor amplifier will be distorted, will be far from the desired. So mm, so what is the benefit of using this emitter bias? Let us see that the Q point of an emitter bias circuit is immune to changes in current gain. This should be established. The proof of this lies in the process used to analyze the circuit. So let us see what are the steps of analysis for emitter bias circuit. So the steps are, as we have done till now, the steps of analysis are for emitter bias circuit. Number one, first step is you need to find the emitter voltage. So get VE, that is emitter voltage. Number two is calculate the emitter current in the next step, that is IE. So you need to, that means you have to have arrived at the conclusion of VC and IC. So while approaching into the values of VC and IC, you need to go through these steps. So in the second, you need to calculate IE, that is the emitter current. In the third, find the collector voltage VC, and in the fourth step, subtract the emitter voltage from the collector voltage to get VC. That means VC equal to VC minus V. So these are the very simple steps of analysis the emitter bias circuit, so that we can arrive at the value of the Q point for that particular given circuit. These are the generalized steps. So at no time we need not to think about to use the current gain in the following process. So in the following process, in the given process, there is no use of current gain beta. That means since we don't use it to find the emitter current or collector current and the other parameters, the exact value of current gain is no longer required for this analysis purpose. So that is a big advantage of using the emitter bias circuit for amplification purpose, because all the steps does not involve at any way, at any time, at any point, at any step, the value of current gain. Now by moving the resistor from the base to the emitter circuit, we have seen in the circuit diagram, we are forcing the base to ground voltage to equal to the base supply voltage. That means since there is no resistance here, the base terminal to ground voltage is equal to this VBB, then the base supply voltage. And before, almost all the supply voltage was across the base resistor when it was there for the base bias circuit, which will set up a fixed base current. Now what is being seen? It is being seen all the supply voltage VBB minus this VBE will be the voltage across the emitter resistor for setting up the fixed emitter current. So the property of emitter biasing circuit is that you need to fix the emitter current IE, unlike the fixing of base current IB for base bias circuit. So what is the basic difference between the two biasing? In emitter bias you need to fix up the IE, in base bias you need to fix up the IB. So here how we are fixing the IE? Just from subtracting this value VBE from this base supply voltage, thereby we are getting a voltage VE across this resistance RE. Now once this VE is known and RE is given, from there you can calculate by Ohm's law the value of IE, which is the fixed value for this particular circuit, and that will ensure your location of Q point at the middle of the load line, so that with the use of this biasing technique, this transistor will be used for amplification purpose. Now let us see if there is any minor effect of current gain. You have seen that the current gain has a minor effect on collector current under all operating conditions. So what we are discussing about now, minor effects of current gain. On this, in light of working with emitter biasing, let us find out if there is any minor effect of current gain on this. You know there is a minor effect of current gain on collector current. and under all operating condition for a transistor we can write IE equal to IC plus IB, and this can be rewritten as IB can be written as IC by beta DC. Now if you find IC from here, IC will be beta DC by beta DC plus 1 into IE. If we calculate IC from this equation in terms of IE, this is the expression. Now this expression beta by beta plus 1 that is multiplied with IE is called correction factor. So this is called correction factor, and it tells you how much IC is differed from IE, because ideally we have seen in the previous derivation that we have considered IC is almost equal to IE based on this equation because IB is very small. But still, if there is any change in beta, that means that minor effect is reflected in the final calculation by a readjustment or correction, and that is done by this correction factor, which is beta by beta plus 1. If that is multiplied with IE, then IC will be far more accurate value than without multiplying with it. So hence this will be called the correction factor. In this case, if this correction factor needs to be multiplied with IE if there is any changes in current gain and that is affecting the operation of circuit because of the change in the collector current IC. In that case, this can be the correction factor, and this and it need to be used to be multiplied with IE in that case, otherwise not. Otherwise we can always assume IC approximately equal to IE. But to get a far more accurate result, we should multiply with this one. So this means here, if we now consider beta equal to 100, let us take an example. So the correction factor will be 100 by 100 plus 1, that means 100 by 101, and this will give us 0.99. So we can say that the collector current is equal to 99% of the emitter current, but not exactly equal. So this collector current is almost 99% equal to emitter current. That means there is a 1% difference between the two currents, and this is the error. To ignore this error, 1% error, we need to leave out the correction factor. But if we include this correction factor in our calculations, this 1% error may be minimized. Okay, so this is all about the emitter biasing. Now let us move on to the next topic, thermal run away. This is a phenomena that is observed, that can be observed in a bipolar junction transistor. Now let us see how this can happen, this thermal runaway. An increase in ICO due to temperature rise. In the in one of our previous discussions, you have seen that there is a part of collector current, reverse saturation current, in the equations, in the transistor equations. You know that that IC is generally written as beta IB, or we can say that IC is equal to beta IB plus beta plus 1 ICO, and also IC is equal to alpha IE, or in sometimes for specific sign conventions we can write it as minus alpha IE plus ICO. So in both these two equations there is a term of ICO which was included in the more accurate current expression, as we have discussed all this thing in one of our previous lectures. So Now this ICO is nothing but the reverse saturation current, and from your basic knowledge of semiconductor physics, you know that the reverse saturation current or leakage current or in a semiconductor device flows due to thermally generated minority carriers. Now this current will be increased, but this current is so small. In many calculations, they are generally neglected or ignored with respect to the other terms. But if there is an increase in ICO due to temperature rise, so if because of temperature rise this ICO gets increased, it will produce parallelly an increase in the collector current IC for the transistor. So if ICO is increased in both the cases, you can understand that this IC in the left hand side of the equation will also parallelly increase. That is, collector current will increase. That means the transistor will go into such a state that it is needed for the transistor to conduct more. So this high conduction or greater conduction by the transistor will cause the collector junction, that is the collector base junction temperature to rise, because there will be high collector current that will be flowing through the collector base junction, which will heat up the junction temperature, which in turn increase ICO. And if the temperature of the junction will increase, that means it will in turn increase once again the ICO, because ICO flows for the minority carriers which are generated by the heat, by the application of heat or the generation of high temperature. Now if in this process, due to the high conduction by the collector junction, the junction temperature gets increased, so more number of minority carriers will be produced, and accordingly ICO will be continuously increased, and that will in turn increase the collector current IC, which will cause the higher conduction by the BJT. So as a result of this increase of ICO repeatedly again and again, collector current IC will increase, resulting in further increase of junction temperature. So if this process goes on and it is being cumulative in nature, it may cause the junction temperature of the transistor to exceed its rated value. You know, for any device operation, if different measurement parameters will be controlled within its rated value. Now junction temperature, or the temperature that any junction of the transistor can withstand, is always there inside its rated value. Now if this junction temperature exceeds this rated value of operation, it will mean the junction will burn out. This phenomenon is called thermal runaway. That means if the junction is burnt out, that means there will not be any current flow path across the junction, and as a result the BJT or the transistor may get destroyed, and this phenomenon is called thermal runaway. So, or it is called thermal runaway of the junction. That means the existence of the junction will be no more. It will not exist because of burning out of the junction, because of cumulative nature of temperature rise across the junction because of higher conductivity by the transistor. Let us discuss now about biasing. So now we are gradually moving into the part of biasing techniques of the transistor. Now what is biasing? Biasing means the establishment of suitable DC values of different currents and voltages of a transistor by connecting it to external DC supplies via suitable circuits. I once again repeat, biasing means it is to establish suitable DC values of different current and voltages of a transistor. That means important thing is to establish suitable means which will be helpful for its working, for the working of the BJT. Suitable DC values, this is important, DC values of voltages and currents of a transistor. And how this can be done? This can be done by connecting it to external DC supplies via suitable circuits, maybe resistors and capacitors in some cases. So this is all about what is actually biasing. By proper biasing, a desired quiescent point of a transistor amplifier in the active region of the characteristics is obtained. And what is the result of this biasing? The result of the biasing is, if the biasing is proper, a desired Q point or the quiescent point desired, that means at which position we actually need this Q point on the load line, that will be obtained of the transistor amplifier, preferably in the active region for amplification purpose of its characteristics, of its VI characteristics. The selection of Q point generally depends on some factors. So factors of Q point selection. So on which factors? Let us see the Q point selection will depend. Number one, the amplitude of the signal to be handled by the amplifier. Amplitude of signal to be handled. That means I have already discussed with you what is small signal, what is large signal, what is the meaning of small signal and large signal, and that amplitude swing of the input signal which is going to be amplified by the transistor amplifier is important for the selection of Q point. And number two is the load to which the amplifier is to work. Load which is driven, that means at which load, what is its property, the amplifier will provide its output. And number three, the available supply potentials. The supply potentials, preferably the DC supply, that is important for the fixation of Q point. And number four, the allowable distortion of the signal. How much distortion? Not always the case of idealness. You cannot get the idealness everywhere. So there is every chance of output of transistor amplifier getting distorted. So how much distortion is allowable? That is important while you are deciding on the selection of the Q point. So it is desired that the Q point should be stable irrespective of changes in temperature or other transistor characteristics due to unit to unit production of the transistors. So the Q point should be stable. So we need finally a stable Q point irrespective of changes in temperature and other transistor parameters. Now the Q point or the operating point of a transistor amplifier may shift. That means the Q point may become unstable still with changes in temperature. So temperature is a very problematic quantity. Temperature is very problematic quantity when it comes to the question of amplification by the transistor. So due to the increase or decrease of temperature, the changes in the action is noted in the transistor amplifier. So and the reason behind that is the shift of Q point because of temperature changes. This temperature change will have direct impact on three major things. One is beta, current gain. Another is ICO, that means reverse saturation current or leakage current. And another is VBE, that is the base emitter voltage. So these three parameters of any transistor amplifier are most important, which depend heavily on the changes in temperature. So these parameters are the functions of temperature. So if temperature is changed, Q point will become unstable because of the changes in beta, ICO and VBE primarily. Now among these three parameters, the change in ICO with temperature is much more than the changes in beta and VBE. So out of the three, ICO is far more important to have an impact on the operation of transistor amplifier to make the Q point unstable than beta and VBE, because just a little while earlier we have discussed about thermal runaway, and for thermal runaway this parameter ICO is most important. To control this ICO is most important to prevent thermal runaway in a transistor amplifier. So there is a statistics that has been observed in different experimentations that this ICO value doubles for every 10 degree Celsius rise in temperature. ICO becomes 2 ICO for 10 degrees Celsius rise of temperature. So this is an important statistics, important data. It is observed primarily in germanium transistors. Silicon transistor, however, exhibit less temperature sensitivity. That's why the transistors are preferably used with silicon, because the temperature sensitivity for silicon is lesser than germanium. Now the changes of beta, ICO and VBE will have a change on collector current IC. That is, collector current IC means that is it is directly impacting the conduction, output current conduction by the transistor. So if we find the differential coefficient del IC by del ICO, that means for the temperature has changed in such a way that there is a differential change of ICO, that is marked by del ICO, and how much it will have an effect on the change in IC marked by del IC. So if we calculate del IC by del ICO, we can get a useful measure of the temperature stability of a transistor circuit. So if we assume that now the change in IC due to change in beta and VB is small, so let us see IC, change in IC, that is del IC, is change in IC, which is denoted by del IC, is not having very much of its impact on changes in beta and VBE, but the impact is large for ICO. We may write mathematically stability factor denoted by capital S, it is approximately written as S approximately equal to DIC by DICO. So why we have shifted from del to D? Because since it is a function, IC is a function of three variables, beta, ICO and VB. So it is a multivariable function. So for multivariable functional change will be denoted by partial derivative. That's why delta has been used. But if we consider that change of IC will not be that much more dependent on beta and VB, but rather it will depend highly on ICO only, then it will be converted to a single variable function of ICO only. We are converting IC to this. So when it is expressed as a single variable function, its differential change will be denoted by not del but by D, because it is a single variable function. So stability factor will be DIC by DICO. That means if there is a small change of temperature, it will have an effect on the change of ICO, and that will immediately in turn will have an effect on the change of IC, that is conduction by the transistor. And if that conduction by the transistor is appreciably large, it may result an unstable Q point, and that will provide distortion in the output. So analyzing this equation S DIC by DICO, we can say that for low value of S it will offer good stability, because low value of S means the change of collector current IC with respect to reverse saturation current ICO will be small, and if change is small, that means my Q point is stable. That means less S means stability factor high, more stable Q point. The lowest value of S is however unity, because IC will be having a factor in its expression ICO. So in many occasions we can see that IC will be approximately equal to ICO, and in that case S will be almost equal to 1 or unity. So the S can be having its lowest value as unity, 1 S lowest value. As the common emitter circuit is the most preferable and useful, we shall consider the different biasing arrangement for this mode of operation only from our next lectures.